name is Dave Vonkliest, and I welcome all of you to the Zombie Nation Seminar. That's kind of a strange name for what do you call this? A gathering, a meeting, a convention, a seminar, an event. Zombie Nation. Why do you suppose Pastor Butch decided to call this a Zombie Nation Seminar? Could it be? Is it possible? Is it within the scope of possibilities that maybe America is turning into or has already turned into a zombie nation? With very few exceptions. Isn't it funny that, who was it? The German philosopher Goethe said that there are none so hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe that they are free. Now, we are free. For those of you that are here and those of us that are aware of what we are aware of, hopefully the fear hasn't taken control and we are free, as long as we allow ourselves to be. But are the American people free? Are we free to do what we choose to do and think what we choose to think? I think not. There are consequences for those of you that think outside of the cage. How many of you have heard that phrase, think outside of the cage? Raise your hand. By the way, how many power team members do we have here? Whole slew of you. That's a good thing. Well, Joyce and I, we really do appreciate the support that we get from all the power team members, because if it weren't for them, then there would be no Power Hour. And we wouldn't be doing the broadcast on a regular basis. We wouldn't have the ability to be able to do the videos and play the music and do all that kind of stuff. So I thank you folks for being able to make it happen. But that's just another example of folks that are thinking outside of the cage, because if you were getting your information from the likes of O'Reilly, Lush Bimbo, and Michael Savage, oh man, you'd be stuck in that cage big time. Well, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this cage because most of you already know what this cage is all about. It's been very carefully crafted by the corporate-controlled cronies. And they basically want the rest of America to do what they want them to do. How many folks have heard of the Sims game? Sims, you know what Sims are? Okay, if you go to your Office Depot or your Staples or anybody that has computers knows of these computer games, and one of them is called Sims City. And Sims City is where you get to create your own city. You get to figure out what the infrastructure is going to be, where the water treatment plant's going to be, how many people are going to live, where's the central business section, where's the urban section, you know, where's the food coming from, how you plan the highway. You get to plan your whole city. And depending upon how well you plan it, determines on whether or not this city prospers or falls into poverty. Kind of an interesting concept, don't you think? How many folks have played Sims before? Anybody out there? Is that the general gist of what it is? Okay. Can you imagine, if you will, if the idea of Sims City were to be, shall we say, put into a national scale? What if you weren't just building a city, but what if you were building an entire county or an entire state or, dare I say, an entire country? How would that game be played? How big would your planning have to be? Is it possible that they actually play this game on a national scale? Who plays the games? Could it be the corporations? You see where I'm going with this thing? I mean, this is exactly what's going on, is that the movers and shakers and policymakers are doing exactly that and have been doing so for many, many years. Generations, dare I say. And they're actually pretty good at it. The only problem is that they've sort of forgotten that they have to live in the same cities that they're expecting us to live in sooner or later. And the simple fact is that that very population that they're dumbing down and trying to control and injecting with contaminated vaccines and dumbing down with psycho drugs are the same people that they're going to have to call upon to defend them when it comes time to do that thing. But the point here, and I know I'm just jumping right into it, the scheduling was basically called for me to be the first speaker, so I just come up here and be the first speaker and lay it on out there. Hope you don't mind, Joyce. Where'd she go? There she is. There she is, okay. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to take all the time allotted, but I do want to show a couple of things. Right off the bat, how many folks have seen 9/11 in plain sight? Almost everybody. How many folks have heard about the new video about to come out called 9/11 Ripple Effect? Well, I tell you what I'm going to do is I'd like to show you right off the bat maybe the first few minutes of this, because there has been such a huge controversy in regard to a couple of points that were made in the first video. The pod and the flash. Does anybody remember that? Yes, I showed that last year. Actually, 2 years ago when that first came out, you folks were the first ones to get to see that. Hold on one second here. Come on. There we go, and... All right. Now, if you will direct your attention, by the way, the little desktop you're seeing there, that's what the sleeve is going to look like with the Statue of Liberty there. It's going to be called 9/11 Ripple Effect, and it should be coming up any moment. Come on now. There it is. Okay. Put the sound in. Now, I'm just going to run this for the first, maybe say 6 or 7 minutes, and then we're going to get back to it here.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Negative contact, we're looking at United 93. Somebody call Cleveland. United 93, verify 350.
Hi, I'm Dave Vonkliest. In the summer of 2004, one of the most controversial video documentaries ever made on the subject of September 11th was released. It would be the first time since September 11th of 2001 that the people of the world would have an opportunity to view video footage that was shown on live television, but in many cases never repeated. Now, this footage kicked off a worldwide firestorm of controversy, not so much because it challenged the official story of what happened on September 11th, but it was video confirmation that the attacks could not simply have been the result of Islamic extremists taking over planes and crashing them into buildings. In this follow-up to 9/11 in plain sight, we'll examine video and photographic evidence. Some of this footage leaked to us by concerned insiders at the Pentagon. We'll examine the planes that hit the North and South Tower. How did the buildings in New York City collapse? What happened at the Pentagon? What happened in Shanksville, Pennsylvania in regard to Flight 93? And we'll also examine how the media has handled its coverage as this information has come out about September 11th. Let's begin with an examination of the two planes that slammed into the North and South Tower. Was there extra equipment attached?
There was definitely a blue logo. It was like a circular logo on the front of the plane, definitely towards the front. It definitely did not look like a commercial plane. I didn't see any windows on the side.
The plane wasn't no airline or anything. It was a twin-engine, big gray plane.
When I first saw the appendage on Flight 175, this extra piece of equipment, I believe I was either at Rents or Simon's website, .crimenews.com. I was looking at the Evan Fairbanks footage, which is kind of bluish, and it's from the underneath. And it's a square shot of the bottom of the plane. You can clearly see that there was some kind of appendage, piece of equipment that's been added to the aircraft. It's off-centered on the fuselage. It's between the engines. It casts its own shadow. It has its own reflection. And when I saw this, I thought somebody's had to have photoshopped this, and I wanted to get other sources to make sure that it wasn't just a product of Photoshop. It was in all the CNN footage when you took their videos and did freeze frames. It was definitely a three-dimensional piece of equipment. It definitely has nothing to do with Photoshop, and it shouldn't be there.
You do find a feature on these planes that was accented in the early DVD entitled In Plain Sight, suggestive of something that has been referred to as the pod, but which George Nelson has simply described as a non-standard feature.
Anybody can see the other piece of equipment right there in the center line on the starboard side of that fuselage. It can't be anything other than an external piece of equipment.
Looking for more video evidence, right at ground zero, Deb Simon and I went down to New York City one day and buying all the pictures from street vendors we could find, we found a picture which I believe is Rob Howard's photograph, but it was a 35mm print. And I was tickled because you could clearly see, the appendage on the bottom. This is not normal for an aircraft. This is not normal for what we should be seeing on Flight 175.
All the recorded sources, all the different photographic evidence that was produced by CNN and ABC, they all show this pod. It's there. You can see it with your own eyes. And in my professional opinion, that there was a pod attached to the bottom of that aircraft, and therefore it was not United Airlines Flight 175.
One of the things that jumped out at me when I looked at the footage of the video of Flight 175 as it went into the World Trade Center is it appeared to me that there was something on the under fuselage of that aircraft that did not belong there, at least not with a commercial airliner. Now, I'll tell you where I have seen attachments that look like that on military aircraft. So the question you have to answer now is, was that the commercial airliner that hit the World Trade Center, or possibly was it an aircraft that looked very similar but was a military type airplane?
After compiling a lot of the photographs and a lot of video regarding Flight 175, and there's some CNN footage that shows the whole side of the plane lighting up. And just as the aircraft is penetrating the World Trade Center, there's this bright anomalous event. It's like an orange flash, off to the right of the fuselage.
The bottom of that aircraft was exposed so that there was a large flash just prior to impact with the building. There was a large flash, so large that it lit up the side of the fuselage of that aircraft. It wasn't just a small spark.
There's been some discussion of just exactly what produced this flash. Some of the scenarios have been talked about have been reflection or sparks or static discharge or possibly an incendiary attached to the aircraft. This flash is produced in the shadow of the wing, so I don't think it could have been a reflection. As far as the possibility of sparks during penetration, the radome of the aircraft is a composite material. It's not metal per se. The wings are metal. They didn't produce sparks as they penetrated. So I don't believe they were sparks. As far as the static discharge, the 767, all aircraft have attached to the airframe what's called static wicks that are there to dissipate any static charges that could be produced on an aircraft in flight. In all my years of flying, the only time an aircraft has been statically charged is when you're flying for extended periods in precipitation. September the 11th was a perfectly clear early fall day without any clouds in the sky, so I don't think these aircraft would have been statically charged by precipitation. And the other item, or possible explanation, would have been an incendiary. And I do believe that this is what the source of the flash was. This flash is produced right in line where the pod was attached. Look at the footage in very slow motion. You can step through the footage with your pause still button on a DVD, and as this aircraft penetrates, you see the enlarged torn area facade where this pod was attached.
All this evidence indicates to me that it was not a reflection or sparks or static discharge, but I think it was an incendiary that was associated with the pod that was attached.
Well, the pod could have been a number of things. It could have been even a missile attached. It could have been some kind of explosive attached. But whatever it was, it didn't belong there on a commercial flight.
This is a rocket pod. We primarily use these to shoot 2.75-inch unguided rockets. On the A-10, the primary role that we use these rockets for is forward air control. We shoot white phosphorus rockets that contain a phosphorus spotting charge. A very brilliant white cloud of smoke comes up when the rocket hits.
American Flight 11 was the flight that hit the North Tower, the first tower that was hit. And as far as we know, it was recorded by just one source, and that was the Nade brothers, who were producing a documentary video about New York firefighters. They happened to be in a position to catch American Flight 11 as it overflew New York City and flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Again, as you look at this footage, slow it down just a little bit, you can see this a big flash before this airplane even hits the North Tower. And I would say quite probably that it was also an incendiary that caused that flash.
Pods under the plane suggesting they might be some sort of military plane, and flashes suggesting that they might be igniting large fireballs for spectacular television effect. Personally, I'm not convinced that that's true, but I'm also I'm not convinced that we need to dismiss that hypothesis. I've looked at these images, and some of the pod images, I think, they don't look to me like just optical illusions, like the people who've debunked this claim.
Did the pod have anything to do with the flash? I can't answer it, but I can say this. The pod you will not find, or an external piece of equipment that large, you will not find on the belly or attached anywhere on the external part of a Part 121 scheduled airliner in the United States. It just won't happen. All that does is tell me that airplane was not the airplane that the government said it was.
I have looked at the films of the plane hitting the South Tower, and I have seen the slowed down version. And it is obvious to me that on more than 2 or 3 of these films, there is a flash of some sort that takes place just as these planes are about to smack into the buildings. I cannot tell you what that is, but I can tell you what it's not. It's not a box cutter.
Indeed, the flash couldn't have been the result of a box cutter.
No, it
so
couldn't.
if the flash was the result of an
Okay, so what I'm going to
incendiary...
do is I'm going to just cut that off for the time being. I wanted to show that particular clip because apparently there has been an awful lot of controversy in the 9/11 truth community. Hi. Sorry about that. There we go. There's been a lot of controversy in the 9/11 truth community itself about whether or not this is a topic that needs to be discussed. Now, some folks believe that, no, we shouldn't talk about flashes and pods. Some folks say, why? How many people have heard that argument? Raise your hand. We shouldn't be talking, well, a lot of you out there. We shouldn't be talking about that. What's the biggest argument that they give? Anybody? Conspiracy theory, you're a nut. But I'm talking about the 9/11 truth community itself. A lot of folks researching. Some people, because let's face it, Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly and Michael Savage and all the other talking heads, they say it's all conspiracy theory. Look what Rosie O'Donnell has had to go through because she dared suggest that maybe Building 7 came down from controlled demolitions. How many folks have heard the argument, well, we shouldn't talk about flashes and pods because, number one, we don't know what caused it, And number two, it takes away from all the real research about controlled demolitions. And if we talk about flashes and pods, we'll destroy all the other credible stuff. How many folks have heard that argument? The same people, just about. Okay, well then let's think about this for just a second. Now again, this is an exercise in thinking outside of the cage. This is something that some folks just, I guess they either missed it or it hasn't occurred to them. Question number one, in regard to the controversies of September 11th, how many people believe that either Building 7 or the towers came down because of controlled demolitions? Raise your hands. Most of you. Okay, keep your hands up for the time being, okay? Now, how many of you folks also believe that somehow the terrorists hijacked the planes? Raise your hands. Almost all the hands go down. I wonder why that is. Okay, well, there are some folks, you see, there's two groups. There's the lie-hops and the my-hops. The lie-hops believe that somehow the government let it happen, lie-hop, okay? The terrorists did it, but the CIA had information months ahead of time it was going to happen, and they knew that Al-Qaeda leaders were planning this whole thing, and Osama bin Laden was bad, and all that. They knew it was going to happen, but gosh, we just couldn't figure it out. You've heard that, right? Okay? That's the lie-hop scenario. The terrorists did it, but the government sort of screwed up. The my-hop folks are the folks that believe that this was an inside job and the government actually did it. The sad thing is that some folks that really do follow the idea that the terrorists had pulled this off, but they also believe that the controlled demolitions were there. How do we put the two together? If you believe the controlled demolitions brought down the towers, then that means that if the terrorists were involved, there's only one of two scenarios. Either number one, the terrorists planted the charges in Building 7, North Tower, and South Tower. How many folks believe that one? No. How could Osama send his boys inside of Building 7 and plant charges all over the place, have it wired to go off in sequence? The North Tower, South Tower? Of course not. Well, then if they didn't have access to the buildings to plant the charges, well, then it was just a coincidence. That means they hijacked the planes and flew them into buildings, and gloriously, those buildings were the same buildings planned for demolition just minutes later. So, if it couldn't have been collusion and it couldn't be coincidence, then how could it have been terrorists? Is it possible? I mean, I'm not saying that Osama's my guy, or I believe that terrorists are not good people. Of course they're bad people. But did they actually have any involvement aside from being patsies in regard to September 11th? That's the question that's raised here, and that's why this clip is so repugnant to so many people, because a lot of folks are very heavily invested into the concept that Honey Hunjor and his boys were training in Cessnas and got behind the stick in a cockpit and flew these planes into the North Tower, the South Tower, and in the Pentagon on September 11th. And anybody that strays from that particular idea, that schema of the world that the terrorists did it, is immediately subject to attack and ridicule and all that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what's happening. And I'm bringing this in because this is mind control. This is part of the zombie nation. I want to show you a couple of quick things here. There was a poll that was done some years ago. Let's see here. In Varel, here it is. Dun, 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 dun. Where would it be? Come on now. No. I'm not looking at it. I'm not finding that here. Oh, wait a second. There we go. This is the one I'm looking for. Okay. This is a USA Today poll. It's taken a couple of years ago. Whom do you trust? Look at the bottom of the list. Federal government with 6%. Think about what this means. This means, let's turn it around, think outside the cage. If only 6% trust the government, that means 94% don't. Okay? Let's go up a little bit. You see the newspapers and the TV news are both right around 24%, 22%. Let's say the TV news, 24%. Where do most people get their news? From the TV. That means ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox. And what's the rating that they get? 24%. That means 76% don't trust the media. So now here's the money question. Where does most of America get their official information? From the TV or from government sources. Now here's where the brainwashing comes in. Most Americans will agree that they don't trust the federal government or the news. So why is it that most of America jumps on the bandwagon when the likes of O'Hannity or Insanity or whatever you want to call them, they point their fingers at the conspiracy theorists and say, you hate your government, you're anti-this and everything, and everybody goes, yeah, wacko conspiracy nuts. Where did these people get their information? From the TV and from the federal government. And here's a little challenge for you. I would ask that in your day-to-day lives, when you're out and about, you go to the convenience store, you go to the post office, you go to the grocery store, you go shopping, wherever, just for yucks and giggles, just for ha-has. Ask people that you come in contact with, say, pull a Peter Falk on them. You know, I've been thinking, and I can't figure this one out. Maybe you could help me. On a scale of 1 to 10, what credibility rating would you give the news, the TV news? And most people will think about it, and overwhelmingly the number that comes up is 3. Most people will say 3, but they give it a 2. Once in a while you get 7. But overwhelmingly, and I've been doing this for months, just for kicks, you do it. Go out and ask people that you come in contact with, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give the TV networks to give you the truth? And most people will say, about a 3. And you say, well, what type of integrity rating would you give the federal government? And they go, 1, 2, 0, -5. All right, so then you ask them, all right, let's go back to the media. You gave them a 3 or a 30%. If you took an exam and scored a 30%, would you pass or fail? I'd fail. Well, if you took an exam and got a 1 or a 10%, would you pass or fail? Fail. All right. Let me ask you another question then. Where do most Americans get their official information? And they go, yeah. All right, so then you ask them, well, what happened on September 11th? Oh, hijackers flew those planes into towers. Oh, really? Who told you? Well, I heard it on the TV. Yeah? Do you believe the TV? Well, yeah. Do you believe the hijackers did it? Well, yeah, they did it. Yeah, Osama did it. Who told you? Man, you're crazy. You're a wacko. And this is the reactions that you get, unfortunately. But this is the brainwashing at work. Nobody likes to admit that they've been fooled. And I will tell you, there are a lot of folks out there that have been fooled. In the end times, even the elect shall be deceived. And where is it all taking us? Well, let's talk about that for just a second. I'm going to play a couple of clips here for you. Going to go to audio. I do things the old-fashioned way here, yeah, with a computer. All right. Hopefully we have the audio up on this computer, and this should work. All right, we're going to play a little clip here. We're going to go back about 16 years. Bush Sr. I'm sure you all remember this one.
Of its founders.
Here we go.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Okay. A new world order. Now, how many folks had heard of that phrase before George Bush Sr.'s presidency? Anybody? Only a few of you. Let's turn the clock back. We want to find out what this new world order is all about. And I'm going to play an audio and make sure that the audio is up and happening. Okay, we're going to go back to 1942. Anybody remember Spike Jones and his City Slickers? Okay. Here we go.
Because we bring the world new order. I'll Hitler's world new order. Everyone of foreign race will love the purest space when we bring to the world disorder.
Okay, did you hear that? We bring the world new order. Wow, wow. Heil Hitler's world new order. It was Hitler's new world order. So the folks during the Second World War heard about this. And you know what? This was such a wildly popular song back in 1942 that Walt Disney made it into a cartoon called The Fuhrer's Face. And here we have a little clip of it. Same section. Here it is.
Is we not the Superman?
Arian Führer Superman?
Yeah, we is the Superman. Super duper Superman. Is this Nazi land so good? Would you leave it if you could? Yeah, this Nazi land is good. We would leave it if we could. We bring the world new order.
Heil Hitler's world new order.
Everyone of foreign race will love the Führer's face when we bring to the world disorder.
All right. Everyone of foreign race would love the Führer's face when he brings to the world disorder. Order ab chaos. How many folks have heard that before? Yes. New world order. Isn't that special? You know, during the first Gulf War, or after the first Gulf War, I should say, there were some very nice gifts that were handed out to some of the people that were involved with that. And one of them was a gun, a Glock. I believe it was a 9mm. Let's take a look at one of the pictures of this Glock. Look at this one. Operation Desert Storm. This is etched on the side of this wonderful gun that they handed out to Norman Schwarzkopf and Colin Powell and George Bush Sr. and Dick Cheney and all the people that were involved. Let's take a look at the other side of the barrel of this gun. New World Order commemorative. Now, what is it with this New World Order thing? Why is it that George Bush Sr. kept talking 19 times in his presidency? What we have here is a real chance for a new world order. Now, what's the deal? How can we link this new world order, this presidency that George Bush Sr. had? Is there any possibility that there was a link between that and Adolf Hitler? How many folks have ever done any research into the connection of the Bush family with Hitler? A few of you have. You will find that George Bush Sr.'s father, Prescott Bush, was very heavily involved in the banks that were funding Hitler's war machine. In fact, they were making sure it was going to happen. You see, when money is no longer an object and you want to win the horse race, you just bet on all the horses. Then you're sure to win. Now, money is not an object with some of these people. They got more money than they need. They just want to manipulate and control. And they know that they can make even more money by having wars. So we go back to what happened during Bush's father's era and the connection with the Bush family and the Hitler regime. Now, how many folks have heard about paperclip? Does anybody know what paperclip is? Paperclip is after the Second World War. A lot of these Nazi scientists were brought back to the United States to continue their work. Now, let's take a look at this picture of the globe. Well, that looks different on that screen over there. Okay. How many folks know about Google Earth? How many folks know about Google? Not a whole, well, that's a good number of you. This is from Google Earth. The question is, has the Nazi philosophy somehow been permeated into our current system? We know that the Nazi scientists were brought to the United States during paperclip. We know that they were put to work in universities and they were put to work in VA hospitals. Because, of course, the Cold War started, and now all of a sudden Russia was our enemy, and they wanted to utilize these Nazis as spies, et cetera, et cetera. So they basically made a deal with the devil and embraced some of these Nazis. Well, how far has this embrace gone? How far has this permeated our military? Is this new world order that was envisioned by Adolf Hitler being carried on by our current government? Well, let's zoom in here and take a look at good old USA. We're going to zoom into California, Southern California. Watch carefully. We're coming in on San Diego, closer, closer, closer. Now we see the bay. We see the Coronado Naval Base. Zoom closer, closer, and here we go. What do we have here? My goodness. This is the Coronado Naval Base Navy SEAL Barracks building. When we saw this, we sent out certified return receipt letters to the Department of Navy. We sent it to the base commander, several other people. We only got one response from the Navy base commander. And basically what he said was that, well, yeah, it's sort of shaped like that, but we didn't know it was going to look like that till halfway through the construction, I mean, it's just one of those things that sort of worked out. It wasn't going to be built that way, but we added on a couple of wings afterwards, and it just sort of turned out that way. Excuse me, sir. Whenever you're going to build a structure, a building, and you have to hire somebody to do that, you have a contractor, they bring forward a proposal, and they have to have a design. They bring you an artist's rendition, an architectural drawing, and there's something called a blueprint! Now, do you think for 1 second that they didn't know what this thing was going to look like? This is scary. I mean, again, if you want to go ahead and get your computer, if you don't have Google Earth, it really is a marvelous program. And you just zoom in on any part of the globe and you can see all kinds of neat stuff. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you because, folks, we do have the philosophy embodied into our government. And if you want to call it Nazis, you can call it anything you want, but what they want to call it is a new world order. And I'm sorry, if it has anything to do with what was given to us during the Nazi regime, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Now, some folks will say, oh, well, you're making this swastika look like the swastika is the evil thing. The swastika, for thousands of years, represented peace, love, godliness, balance, and nature, and all that, which is all good stuff. But the overwhelming majority of people that walk around the face of this planet see a swastika, and they relate it to the Nazis. So, as far as, what it was originally supposed to mean, yeah, I understand it meant peace. I understand all that stuff. But that doesn't really matter in today's society because most people don't know that. They see the swastika, that it means Nazis. So when I see a swastika on the Coronado Naval Base, that means Nazis to me. And I don't know if that's what it means to you, but that's what I'm getting out of it. But the bottom line here, folks, is that, yes, we are being messed with. And I'm not going to, I know I'm scheduled, I'm scheduled to wrap this thing up now. But bottom line here, folks, is that we're being messed with in our heads. We are being absolutely messed with in our heads. And we have to keep our minds open because there are a lot of folks out there that have different concepts of what's going on in this world. But the one thing that we have to keep in mind is that, hey, look at whatever you're feeling or belief system is when it comes to your relationship with God Almighty, Yahweh, Jesus, Yeshua, whatever name that you want. A rose by any other name will smell as sweet, as they say. And I mean, all it is basically is your own relationship with God if you have one. And I'll leave you with this little idea that popped into my head a couple of years back. In the Bible it says that God said this or that, and that's how creation happened. And God said, let there be this. And God said, let there be that. And the Bible says when you pray, pray with your mouth, okay? Pray out loud. The voice, in other words, is what creates. Frequencies is what creates. I know some of this sounds, whoa, wait a second, what do you mean frequencies? The voice makes different sounds, high sounds and low sounds. It's, when you use your voice, you're creating frequencies. That's what I'm talking about. And I got to thinking about it. How does a voice work? Now, I'm a musician. I've used my voice all my life. I do crazy, silly voices. Sometimes you put your voice up and sometimes you do it low, and that's all frequencies. So I got to thinking, how does a voice make sound? Well, you've got vowels and consonants. Okay, consonants are like D makes D or B. for P or F for F. Those aren't real sounds with the voice. The voice makes the sounds that are represented by vowels. A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. So I got to thinking, I said, if God is the beginning and the end, the Alpha, the Omega, you know, I mean, he's everything. So I got to thinking about if he's the beginning and the end, how does that relate to the voice? And I got to thinking, if the high frequency of the voice, the highest vowel, to me would be E. E, and the lowest is oo. Are you with me on this? This is conceptual, okay? Really crazy stuff, okay? But if E is the high one, and you work your way down, E, and then I would be I, A would be A, O would be O, and U would be U. So you go E, A, O, U, and then sometimes Y. E, A, O, Y. E, A, O, Y. E, A, O, Y. Yahweh. Yahweh. And you know what? I put it in my recorder. I recorded it. And you know what? It's the same backwards as it is forwards. Yahweh. Yahweh. I am the beginning, I am the end, the Alpha, the Omega. Maybe that really is the holy name. I just thought I'd leave you with that little thought. Sort of cool, isn't it? Anyway.